The game in this video was lent to us to make content about by Kastle in Kent, Washington. If you're in the area, check them out. It's a great store run by great people. I'll have their information in the show description. Hi everybody, welcome to All Games New and Old. I am David Rodriguez, and today we're going to be reviewing Dead Men Tell No Tales. This was published from Minion Games in 2015 and was designed by Kane Klinko. Now, in this game, you play as pirates trying to pull loot off of a burning ship, but there's also undead crewmen going around that are trying to stop you. Can you get all the treasure off before the ship explodes or sinks? That is the question. But to tell you a little bit more about the life of a pirate and how it relates to this game, let me take you to our friend Wallace Rackham.
Avast, me hearties. And what is it you need me to be talking about today?
Dead Men Tell No Tales? But wait, did you lose your left hand?
What, this? Don't be dramatic. It's in a box right over there. I haven't lost anything.
Okay, well, what did you think of Dead Men Tell No Tales?
Honestly, I have a big problem with this game. You see, the dead men in this game walk around like you or I. And I will tell you this. They tell way too many tales. It's non-stop. All about how they died. I was made to walk the plank. I was keel-hauled. I was sat on by a goat. I was sat on by 5 goats. There was a manatee that mauled me underwater. Doesn't explain why he was underwater. Constant stories. They never stop. Sea lion stampede.
Okay, what's your point?
Point is, landlubber, game's good. Not at all accurate.
Alright, well, I guess that's something to consider. Let's go to our gameplay overview. Alright, let's talk about how this game is played. So this is a fully cooperative game. 2 to 5 players can try to win at this thing. Although I did play one solo just with 2 pirates, so you could do that too, I suppose. But yeah, if you're all playing by the rules, 1 pirate each. 2 to 5 players. So everyone is going to, it says in the rulebook to do it randomly, but you could also pick if you prefer. You're going to get an individual pirate that'll have its own special abilities. Like there's one that just gets an extra action compared to everybody else. Like one is better at dealing with the deckhands. There's another that can copy the powers of anyone else.
There's one that's better at dealing with fires.
Yeah, so there's a good variety, and they kind of are all specialized in dealing with certain things that can go on in the game. You will also get a random item, so there's several of those in the game, and those will give you yet another ability. So it could also, help you deal with fires, help you fight your enemies better. There's a few different choices in there. So the game starts with one kind of larger tile. It's basically the size of 4 of the others, essentially, with a few other bells and whistles on it. And that is going to be the space that your characters can enter the ship. They are basically off of the ship in a little dinghy, floating alongside, waiting to hop onto this thing because they've apparently just blown this ship nearly sky high and it's burning and it's terrible.
And you're about to go loot it.
And you're about to go loot it because you're pirates and fire doesn't scare you. Let it burn.
Well, you got to get it before it sinks to the ocean.
Let it burn.
You're not a pirate.
I'm not a pirate. Sorry. If you're are you disappointed? It's weird. Anyway, at the beginning of each of your turns, you are going to search the ship. And that basically means you're going to take one of the tiles from the face down stack, or unless it's on your very first turn of the game, everyone in the first one will take 2, but after that it's 1. So you're going to take one of the tiles, you're going to look at it, and it's going to have a new room for the ship. And you can add that anywhere you want to on the ship, but there are some limitations. So if that ship has doors on it, you have to match that up to an existing door, or that door has to be matched up to a place where a tile hasn't been placed yet. You can't have a door going up against a wall at all. They'll also usually have a symbol of a die on there, and so you will have to put the correct color die at the correct number of pips on that room so that you know how hot that fire is burning at that time. Then you're going to reach into the cool little bag and pull out a token, and those tokens have a variety of things on them. One of the things it could have is a trapdoor symbol, and that will go in the room. All these will go in the room you just placed. And the trapdoor is basically another spot that the deckhands can pop out of, which is sort of a it could be a problem. There are other types too. So there are some are all double-sided. So one grouping of them is the skeleton crew, and so on one side those will have a skeleton and the strength of that skeleton, because they're all kind of a different fighting ability, and on the other side it will have some sort of an item that you can get once you've defeated that skeleton. But you'll always put its skeleton side up, because you have to fight those guys to get the things you need. The other type are the guards, and these are the really important ones because they have a much more powerful skeleton on one side, and on the other side, one of the treasures that you have to get off the ship. Depending on the number of players you have and the difficulty you've chosen, you will have to get a certain number of treasures off the ship to win the game. So you have to watch for where those guys are popping up and be ready to figure out how to deal with them.
For your actions, you're going to get 5 action tokens, and they're double-sided so that you can flip them over as you're taking your actions so that you can keep track of how many actions you've taken. If you don't use all your action tokens, you can pass them on to the next player, and you will get them back when they're done using those action tokens for your next round. Some of the actions that you can take is you can walk into a room. You will take fatigue based off of the difference of the room that you're in versus the room you're moving to. If you're moving into a room that has a higher pip dice, then you will take fatigue equal to the difference. So if you're in a room that had a 2 and you move into a room that has a 4, you'll take 2 fatigues. You can also run, which allows you to move 2 rooms away, but you will take the fatigue as normal with an additional 2 fatigue. So if you moved from like a 2 pit room to a 3 pit room to a 4 pit room, you would take 4 fatigue because you would take 1 for each additional room that you went into and then the additional 2. You can lower a fire in the room that you're currently in by 1 for each action token you use. Some of the characters or items may allow you to lower the fire in an adjacent room. And then you can eliminate 1 deckhand either in the room that you're currently in or an adjacent room. Again, there's some items that can, allow you to eliminate a couple extras. The reason why you want to kind of eliminate deckhands and keep them under control is for a few reasons. The most important one is if you run out of deckhands and you can't place any when you're supposed to, you lose the game. The other things that can happen with the deckhands is if there's 3 or more deckhands in a room, you can't enter that room. If there's 2 deckhands in the room, then you can't pick up an item that has been uncovered. 1 deckhand doesn't really matter too much other than when they're spreading out. Another, you can rest, which lets you recover 2 fatigue. You can swap item cards out, so and you can even do that with the other players. So like there's a little bit of a market that has any unused cards out that you can swap out, and then you can also swap with another player as well. One of the things that's a little different with the item cards in this game is that you're allowed to use the ability of the card before you swap out the card, and then you can use the ability of the new card that you get as well.
Feels like you're cheating.
Yeah.
It feels like you shouldn't be allowed, like, I can't possibly use this item and then swap it, and then use that item, and then swap it, and then use that. Like, as long as you have the actions to do it, you could just keep doing that if there's reason to do so. It seems like that cannot be true. Like, I had to double check the rules a couple times. I was like, no. But yes, you can do it. It's crazy. So
you can also increase your battle strength, and this will come in handy when you are fighting some of the crew or guards. When you fight them, you will be rolling a dice to try and meet or exceed the number that's on the token. And your battle strength is added to your dice roll. And you can roll the dice first and then decide whether you want to add your battle strength or not. If you add the battle strength goes up to +4. If you use it, you use all of it. And so after you defeat the guard or crew member, you will flip the tile over, and it'll either have a useful item like a cutlass that will actually go on your battle strength board, and so when you go down, you automatically start a little bit higher up. One of the last actions you can do is to actually pick up that item, whether it's that or a treasure. One other thing that you can do that's a free action, so it doesn't actually take up one of the action tokens, is you can drop your item. So some of the reasons why you might want to do that is like if one of the items you can get is rum, which helps recover some fatigue. And so if there's another player that's close by that really needs the rum more than you do, you can drop it so that they can pick it up on their turn.
So once you've taken all your actions, now it's time for bad stuff to occur. So there is a deck called the Skeleton's Revenge deck, and what you'll do is you will draw the first one of those, or the top one of those I should say, and there could be a number of icons on this. So there could be a die on there. I think that's probably the most common thing. And so let's say, for instance, it is a yellow die with 3 pips. What you're going to do is you're going to look out over the board, and anywhere you have a yellow die with 3 pips, you're going to roll that up 1. And that's dangerous because you do not want those to get to 6. So you have to keep those down. There are a few cards in that deck that have a die with a 5 pip on it. And those can, cause an explosion right then, which is really nasty. If any of those die that represent the fires get to a 6, it causes an explosion, destroys everything in that room. You flip the tile over, and that room, you can no longer pass through it. It's no longer accessible in any way. So, very dangerous. Also, there is an explosion tracker at the bottom that you're going to have to move up every time there's actually one of those explosions. If that gets to the end, you will lose because the ship is blown to smithereens, I guess. Okay, other things that those could have is it could tell you to move one of the skeleton crew, in which case they're just going to move a space towards the nearest pirate. It could have there's a couple different trapdoor symbols. One of them, you will place a new deckhand anywhere you have a trapdoor token. The other one is that they will spread out. So in that case, you won't put a skeleton crew on the trapdoor token, but in an adjacent room, you can put one. If it has fewer deckhands than the room with the trapdoor does, then they can spread out.
Or if it doesn't have a trapdoor.
Or if it doesn't have a trapdoor. Yeah, they can't spread into a room with a trapdoor. We played this a few times. Last time we played twice in a row. In the first game of that, we kind of forgot that there was limitations on how those guys could spread out, I think. And so they were spreading out like crazy, and it was a disaster. It was a complete mess.
We ran out and lost.
Oh, yeah. We ran out fast. So don't do that. Read the rule book better than I did. It's fine. I played it before, but it's been long enough that I just didn't remember those specifics. But those are important specifics, so don't forget that. Some of the cards have a die, but they don't have any pips on there. In that case, anywhere you have a die or a room where it should have a die of that color and it doesn't have one, you'll place a die out on there with just the 1 pip up. So weak fire, but it's, kicked back to life with that.
Yeah, and another thing to kind of note with the fights of both the crew and the guards is as soon as either you enter the room with them or they enter your room, it triggers the fight. So you want to prepare for that as much as you can before you go into that room. If the crew member moves off of the card, then you have to do the fight right then too. Yeah,
and those fights, and she talked about rolling die to match their I don't know, toughness or battle strength, I suppose. If you win, obviously you just flip them over and then you can pick up whatever it is they've dropped. But if you lose, it's a little different. If it's one of the skeleton crew, well, first thing, regardless of which one beats you, you're going to figure out the amount it beat you by. So the difference between its strength and whatever it is you rolled, you're going to take that much fatigue. So that can be kind of dangerous. If your fatigue runs all the way out or gets all the way up to the highest number, rather, you die. Not the best. If you're fighting a skeleton crew and you lose, you're then going to roll a die. And depending on what side comes up, certain things are going to happen. So if you roll a 1 or 2, the enemy is going to retreat. So that skeleton crew is going to go into an adjacent room. If you roll a 3 or 4, that means you retreat. You'll go into an adjacent room, but you have to take the fatigue that you would as if you just moved normally. If you roll a 5, then you fight again, and if you roll a 6, you get to pick which one of those options happens. If you're fighting one of the guards that's guarding the treasure, a little different. You still take the fatigue damage as normal, but you can basically choose to either fight again or retreat, and it doesn't cost you an action. So
it is important to note, though, that you can't retreat into a room that is above what your fatigue level is at.
Yeah, because that fatigue track, there's dice depicted along it, so when it gets to a certain height, you can no longer go into a room that has a 5 strength fire. And then once you get a little further, you can't go into a room that has a 4 strength fire. So if you're getting really up there in that fatigue track, you got to start putting out some fires or hoping someone else can, because otherwise you're going to be really restricted in how you move around, and that could be really dangerous too. Alright, so as far as winning and losing, I think I mentioned before that you win when you get a certain number of treasures off the boat into your dinghy.
And all pirates have to get off the boat as well.
Yeah. So if you've gotten all the treasure off the boat and then one of the pirates that's on the boat dies, that's a lost condition. if you reach the end of that explosion track, as I mentioned before, that will cause you to lose too. If you're overwhelmed, like we mentioned, if you need to put out deckhands and there are no more to put out, you lose. If you get trapped so that you can no longer escape the ship, that'll cause you to lose as well.
One thing to note, if you go through all the tiles, the very last tile that you place will become a second exit. So you can either exit out the main way you've been exiting out the game, or you can exit off the last tile that's placed.
Another lost condition is if it is now impossible to get the number of treasures you need, either because they've been completely blocked off by explosions, or they've actually been destroyed by explosions and you just can't get them anymore. That's a loss. If it's impossible for you to win, that's a loss, strangely enough. Other than that, if you've died, because every time you die, you just basically take on a new pirate role. If somebody dies and there's no more pirates to take on, you lose that way too. So there's a lot of ways to lose this game, and pretty much one way to win, as is I think kind of typical of these type of games, but that's what you're up against.
For the art and components, there's not a lot of artwork to this, but the artwork that's there is really good. The character cards are really good. The tiles are actually really detailed. Like, there's not a lot to them, but what they have on them is very detailed. The fire looks really nice. The wood looks like wood. All of the items that you can get are really nicely detailed. So all the artwork is really well done, I think.
I agree. I like it quite a bit. The character portraits are very cool. I like all of them. They all have a lot of personality to them. I'd say one is maybe sexier than she has to be.
A little bit, but I don't think she's over the top. Like, some people might have an issue with her, but I think overall, I think most of your gamers aren't going to have an issue with this one.
Yeah, it's just going to have like the midriff thing going, but it's not real insane, or she's not trying to be sexy posing and that kind of thing. So it is what it is. I'm sure I will be showing pictures somewhere along this video. You can see her and see what you think, if it bothers you or not. But the tiles, like you mentioned, there is a lot of detail on them. When you're playing, it sort of just starts looking like the sea of darkness and fire, and that's sort of what it looks like. But if you actually really look at them, there's a lot going on, which is really cool. And I agree, the fire looks phenomenal. I like the way all the skeletons look. They look creepy, as you'd want. And even like the board with your fatigue track, that looks really neat. It looks kind of like it's on old parchment or something, which I definitely appreciate. There is one token, one of the items you can get, the cutlass. I swear to God, it's just because of how it's lying down. It just looks like a rat at the end of a beam to me or something, which it is.
It's a little weird, but
and I cannot see it correctly. I know what it is. I know it's supposed to be. It's like you're looking at the sword, and then anyway, it looks like a rat on a beam. So, whatever helps you win the fight. If it's a sword, great. If it's a rat on a beam, fantastic. That's cool. But I mean, that's really just my eyes saw it wrong, and now I can't make myself see it really right consistently anymore.
You can't see it.
Yeah, but I don't think it is bad art. Just to be clear, it is just one of those things where it's it's constrained.
Just
in
the angle
it's angle. It's in this little token, so it's not. It doesn't have a lot of other things around it to add context. So it just looks strange to me. But that is a me issue. If you're not me, you may not have that problem. And I bet you're not. So
the token bag is actually a decent token bag. I know we've talked about token bags before that I felt like I had to replace, and I don't think that's the case with this one. It's a nice velvet bag. So
the dice are really cool. They're yellow and red, and they're not just like a solid color. They've got kind of like that swirly stuff in it, which is really, I think, appropriate for them. It's supposed to be representing flames. And your pirate meeples are all pretty cool too. So, overall, it's not like an extravagant production, but I think what it is very nicely done. Okay, for the theme, I don't know if you've ever ridden Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland or Disney World or any of the other Disneys, but there is a part where there's this skeleton head that says "Dead men tell no tales," and literally anytime I look at the box, that is what goes on in my head. But that's of course very appropriate because there's a lot of pirate fighting going on in that ride, and there's a lot of pirate fighting going on in this game. I think that it really captures the chaos of what I can only imagine it must be like to run onto a ship that is sinking and burning and crawling with undead. That's a lot of chaos.
It is.
I don't know why these pirates are doing this. I really don't. If I got on that ship and I actually got off alive, pockets empty, I'd be like, victory. I did it. I survived. These people's standards of victory are much too high, but it's a game, so that's it. So it really brings me in. I mean, there's so much stuff going on and things happening that you might not even be near. Like the fire over there may be raging, but that could cause you a problem later, so you have to still kind of be aware of it. I really like it. I do think it's weird that I could swap an item with someone who's completely on the opposite end of the ship. That's a little strange thematically, but it doesn't really bother me because I appreciate the versatility it gives you so much. I find myself trying to figure... I know what a deckhand is. I'm trying to figure out what these deckhands are. Because you have your guards, which are your tough skeletons. You have your skeleton crew, which are the crew that are skeletons. And then you have your deckhands, which are little, like, skeleton, like, wooden tokens. So I assume they're also undead? Are they just, like, really bad skeletons? What are they? Why are they so easy to deal with? I don't know. That's weird. But it's okay, too. I'm not actually bothered by this. It's just one of those things where I was playing, I was like, what are these guys? Like, why are they so wimpy and ineffective? But they are. What are you going to do?
They're the new guys. They're the new guys,
yeah.
Doing yet.
Yeah, they're skeletons and they're still somehow getting seasick. It's really embarrassing. So maybe that's it. I'm not sure. Either way, it does put me in the situation, and when I have my movie going on in my head, this is definitely a movie that I would go to the theater and see. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I think they did a really good job of incorporating the theme throughout the game. I actually really appreciate all the thought that went into the fatigue and the feet and how that's all affected. Because it makes sense. Like, if you're running onto a ship that's on fire, if you're going into a room that has more fire, it's going to have more smoke and it's going to wear down your body more. If you're carrying around a treasure through all this smoke and fires, that's going to wear down your body more. When you get off the ship, you get to rest a little bit, so you're recovering some of your fatigue. So I think the fatigue itself, I think they did a really great job of incorporating that all throughout the game.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So if you watched our channels before, you know that, like, we have some games that, like, we're kind of looking for to fill this niche of theme that we really want in a game. And, for me, it's pirates. And so when we went to one of our local game stores and we were talking to the owner and about different stuff, I mentioned that I really looking for a good pirate game, and so he really enjoys this game, so he recommended it to us, and they had a demo game of it, so they let us borrow their demo game for us to be able to play and try out and review. So it's a really fun game. I'm really glad that we got to play it. I don't think it's quite filling that pirate game itch that I'm looking for, but it's a fun game, and I really enjoy it. I like the tension that it has of having that living board coming out, so you don't really know exactly what you're going to do or what's coming out and when. I actually really, I really appreciate the thought of the fatigue and having to manage that and manage the fires. I really like puzzles, and so a lot of co-op games have that puzzle feel to it, and I think that this one it has a few extra layers that some other co-op games that are similar don't have.
Yeah, I agree. I mentioned earlier that it has things that are reminiscent of Pandemic, and I feel like it is sort of like, I know there's a lot of pandemics. I'm talking about Base Pandemic here, just so we're clear, but Base Pandemic kind of evolved with like new things added to add to the complexity or chaos, perhaps even of it. And I think it handles that really well. I agree. Like I really like the fatigue and trying to manage that. It just adds like another thing. Like you can push it, and risk it going really high, and then maybe having a problem in a fight that could get you in severe danger. Or you could be really cautious and try to boost your fatigue up every chance you get. there's lots of ways you could tackle it because there's so many different variables here, much more so than in a game like Pandemic. Which, I mean, I don't remember when Pandemic came out. This one came out in 2015, so it's, you know, it's been several years since this came out, but Pandemic was quite a bit earlier than that.
Yeah, it was well established by then.
Yeah. But, you know, I think it is more than just a Pandemic clone, for sure. It really is its own thing, with enough that if you've played Pandemic, this is still a jump up to something that's got enough differences, I think, to keep you playing.
Yeah. How do you feel about with the luck in this game? You know, there is dice rolling and pulling cards, and the living board is always going to have some luck to it. I feel like there's enough kind of mitigating things between the items and your actions that the luck doesn't feel too bad in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't want this to... I don't think I'd want this to have less luck than it has. I think everywhere that it's applied, it works well. You know, I think not knowing for sure what is going to trigger what, like you don't know if the next tile is going to, or next Skeleton Revenge card is going to create an explosion or make a room now inaccessible to you. And you shouldn't in this kind of situation. Like, you know, it is a chaotic situation they're depicting, so there should be things that you don't know. You could kind of prepare for those as best you can, or try to come up with plans to deal with it if things go wrong, just like you would. And that's about it. I think the only place that maybe people might have issue with it, but I personally don't, is having to roll die to deal with the guards and the skeleton crew. I could see maybe some people not liking that, especially if they just have a bad game and they just cannot roll worth a dang. That could be frustrating, I suppose. I don't really mind that. To me, especially in a fight, especially in this kind of situation, you know, the dice and the luck is there to cover, at least in an abstracted way, the things that could go wrong in a fight that you couldn't have prepared for.
Right.
Like, no matter how good you are, like, oh shoot, you didn't see that round thing, you stepped on the floor, and now you tripped when you should have been able to swipe. And, you know, I think it's keeps it more thematic.
Yeah.
Some people might not like it, but
yeah,
it doesn't bother me.
And yeah, there are ways that you can kind of boost if the dice are not on your side that turn. It's a co-op game, so you don't have to fight the guards and the crew. You can go around and handle the fire and the deckhands.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I know we talked about before is if you have a group where quarterbacking or alpha gaming is an issue, this doesn't solve that. You know, some co-op games will have you know, a limit on the way you can communicate, or, you know, they may be like Spirit Island where there's enough complexity to your actions that, like, it's hard for someone else to tell you what you should be doing. This one, if you have, you know, that kind of alpha gamer person in your group, it's gonna happen here. There's really nothing to mitigate that. At least I don't think there is. But, you know, that's just one of the things you have to know. If you have to know your group, and if that's going to be an issue or not, it's just what it is.
Yeah. So, like I said before, like, I'm kind of on my quest to find the pirate game that's the right fit for me. You know, I really enjoy this game a lot. It doesn't quite fill the niche that I'm looking for in a pirate game, but is a really fun pirate game. And, you know, I think if you like co-op games, and if you like kind of having some wild chaos, like if you played Pandemic and you really enjoy that game but want something a little bit more in depth or a little bit heavier, I think this is a really good game for you to try out. For me, I'm going to give it an 8 because I really enjoyed this game a lot. There's some simplicity to this game. It's not a super heavy game, but it's a really fun game.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely fun. A lot of times when I'm doing the reviews on this channel, I'll be like, oh, I'm going between these two scores, and I have to figure out which one of those it is. This one is a little bit backwards. I hit a score that just feels right to me, and then I was like, why is it that? Why is it not, in this case, higher, although I still give it a good score. So I'm going to get to the score right away, and then I'm going to try to figure out why I did this. Okay, so I'm giving this a 7. That's still a really good score. I always feel like I have to apologize for 7s when that's ridiculous. A 10 is like a perfect game, pretty much, or a game whose flaws don't matter because the rest of the game is so amazing. A 5 is like just a super average, like, whatever game. And like a 0 or a 1 is a game that you should throw into the ocean, and then you should be arrested for massive pollution because it's that terrible a game. So 7 is a good score. And I kept thinking, like, why is this not an 8 for me? Because I can't poke a lot of holes in it, but I think the thing is that, you know, as I mentioned, this game came out in 2015. So if you're talking about buying this game today, there's a lot of games that have done this, that share that pandemic DNA, pandemic included, and the many pandemic spin-offs included. So I kind of had to think, is this game necessary? Do I want this over the others? And I think, you know, as we mentioned, this was lent to us. I do think I want to have this in my collection, but I feel like it might either have to push something out, or it's like the last one before something has to start getting pushed out that has this sort of like, you're dealing with these situations as they get out of control here and there, and these things are exploding and spreading. That's the technical term for that mechanic. It's a very well done one of those that we've seen a lot of. Now, if you haven't played that flavor of co-op game, or maybe even just played like Pandemic and you're like, I wish I could have like a little more, a little bit more complexity, this is great. Like, I would highly recommend it. And like I said, I want to get this into my collection too. It's right on that borderline between like, if I get this, do I need to keep another one, or should I ever get another one like this, or will that push something out? You know what I mean? It's right in that ballpark. So I would really always be happy to play this game. Like, anytime someone brought them out or suggested it, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Would I be the one like really pushing to play it? Maybe not. I might suggest it, depending on the group, but I wouldn't be like, oh, I really want to do this. Like, we got to play this one for sure. Maybe not quite, but I would always be very happy to get this to the table. So, yeah, I hope that was not a whole bunch of utter nonsense. I felt a little bit like I was rambling, but part of it is like I'm kind of trying to... this is what has been going through my head all day, because I knew we were going to be getting to this, and I'm just like, okay, I need to be able to understand my score. And I wasn't totally sure, other than this just feels like a 7, but I can't just say it just feels like a 7 and leave it at that. So all those reasons are why. It's a great game that at its core is something we've done a lot. So it's a 7 for me. If you haven't done this before, it will likely be higher for you. But those are our scores, 7 and 8. That's still really fantastic score. So a pretty good recommendation from us to you. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you have, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time we put out a video. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you all around the table again at All Games New and Old.
Bye.
Or it could... it could be an avalanche, you never know. Once you take... Okay. And that actually is not the quake. Not the quake. I don't even know what that means.
Not the question.
What's up?
So, you know... you probably heard me talk about... God, I'm...
Sometimes it's like that. If you enjoyed that video, you might also like this one.
Or this one.
If you like any of our videos, what you should do is click this little button to subscribe so you'll know about the next time we put out a video.
We'll see you around the table.
Bye.
Bye.